thank him for gracing this occasion today. The report is an effort towards our endeavor to foster greater economic linkages with the premiers of both countries having shared a vision of treating each other as a strategic partner and also participate in each other's global value chains. With these few words, I would actually set the ball rolling by inviting Dr. Sanjay, President FICCI, to formally welcome the Honorable Minister and give a welcome address. Dr. Reddy.
So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and namaste. It's an absolute pleasure for me to welcome Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar ji for the launch of the FICCI SAM Knowledge Report entitled India-Japan Time to Seize New Opportunities. Honorable Jaishankar ji, we're grateful to you for gracing the occasion. We realize the pressure on your time, the tremendous range of activities which are currently going on. And I think just a reflection of the importance of your presence and the fact that you value the Japanese relationship so highly is what has brought you here. So we are truly grateful. Other important and distinguished people who have joined us on this occasion, Mr. Shardul Shroff, our Senior Vice President, Mr. Jaishankar, Ambassador Sanjay Verma, great pleasure to have you here, sir. Mr. Tushide Ando from the Embassy of Japan, other Government of India officials, business leaders, diplomats, media, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me begin by conveying my sincere admiration to our government, the Indian government, for the tireless efforts over the past months towards these twin goals of protecting lives of Indian citizens and addressing the massive challenge of getting the economy back on the track, while at the same time making sure that our international relationship and the leadership and the sense of a brotherhood that we continue to show to the world remains intact, whether it was in the mechanism of sharing medicines or sharing protocols, but always we are a part of a much larger global community. Honorable Minister Jaishankar, your thought leadership and deep engagement with the entire spectrum of India's proactive diplomatic outreach to the world, including driving India's engagement with Japan, has nurtured our relationship further, which has also benefited industry of both countries. Honorable Minister, you will agree that India and Japan share a great relationship, which is based on mutual trust, on shared values of democracy, on respect of the rule of law, combined with convergence of political, economic, and strategic interests, which have made this partnership stronger. Japan's support to India, even during the time of the pandemic, through its 50 billion yen support to fight COVID, is indeed a testament of its strong commitment towards India, and we are grateful. This will certainly contribute to recovery and stability of society and economy, as well as to sustainable development. India's recent signing of the acquisition and cross-servicing agreement with Japan is indeed a watershed moment in our relationship and will be instrumental in our shared vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific region. And when we say free and open, we also look to future. So as we look to build back the future, we actually look to build future. And in that, we foresee a wonderful range of activities which should happen. To the honorable members from Japan, we look forward to visiting your country for the future Olympics. We look forward to deeper economic relationships. We respect the beauty and the capability, not just of your country, but of your people. And we respect the culture that you have always shown, whether in peace times or in pandemics. I'm very happy that we are using this, that we are here gathered today to launch this report. This report is an effort to further supplement this endeavor of the Indian government towards the vision of making India an integral part of the global manufacturing value chain in partnership with Japan, and presents enablers that will make India a preferred destination for both greenfield investment as well as expansion of existing investments. It captures the recent policy reforms by the Government of India, including policies and regulatory environment required to nurture this economic relationship further. With these words, we look forward to your special address and interaction to understand the Government of India's broad agenda for the Indo-Japan partnership and for realizing the vision of making India a part of the global manufacturing value chain with Japan. We thank you, sir, for your time, your presence, your continuous support and cooperation. And just on behalf of Vicky, let me say that not only do we have various members of the business community like Mr. Rohit Relan, who have deep relationships with Japanese companies, but we have, on behalf of Vicky, a tremendous commitment to explore these relationships, to strengthen them, and to be proactive in our steps towards our joint economic development. Thank you all very much. Good evening, and all the very best for a successful launch and, more importantly, an implementation of the powerful concepts in this report. Namaste and Jai Hind.
Setting the tone very effectively. I would now invite Mr. Shardul Shroff, Chairman of Shardul Chand Mangaldas, for providing an overview of this report. If you all can see the array of awards behind him, that only shows how privileged Vicky feels partnering with Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas on this knowledge initiative. Mr. Shroff, please.
Thank you, Manish, for that kind introduction. Honorable Minister, Honorable Ambassadors of India to Japan and Japan to India, and colleagues from FICCI. It gives me great privilege and honor to speak to the report between India and Japan, Time to See New Opportunities, which sets out the changing investment culture and requirements of the global economy and its impact on relationship between Japan and India, particularly in the light of the US-China trade war and the Indo-China standoff on its border and the pandemic. Japan has always been one of the largest investors in Asia, and particularly in India and China. The enduring economic and strategic partnership between India and Japan has grown leaps and bounds over the past few years due to the perseverance of both sides. In the financial year 2018 and 19, Japan's FDI in India was about $2,965 million, and it rose up to $3,225 million in the financial year 1920. Apart from directly investing in India, Japanese companies are also investing in India through Singapore subsidiaries. In the wake of the pandemic, companies across the globe, including Japanese companies, are considering diversification and de-risking strategies to set up their manufacturing bases and associated value and supply chains in Southeast Asia countries other than China. The Japanese government's announcements of a stimulus package for Japanese companies to de-risk their supply chains and diversify their operations and move part of their bases to other Asian countries like India is a welcome step. A survey of Japanese manufacturers with overseas subsidiaries conducted by JBIC ranked India as the most desirable place to do business in the long and medium term. This has provided a unique opportunity to India to leverage its existing position in the manufacturing sector to entice global value chains to move or expand their production capacities and capabilities to India in the light of de-risking activities being undertaken. As Japan has been one of the most active investors in India, the Government of India has ensured that various benefits and structural reforms are aimed at enabling Japanese investors in startups in emerging areas such as food technology, electric vehicles, or in the fields of the upcoming digital technology such as artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, big data, to have a streamlined entry into the Indian market. The technological and economic prowess of Japan, coupled with India's established strengths in manufacturing, software, technology, and related essential skill sets, could further strengthen the ties between the two nations and may lead to a paradigm shift in the supply chains across the globe. Both the Japanese governments and the Government of India have taken various initiatives, such as the introduction of the Indian-Japan Digital Partnership Japan Plus, Information Technology Corridor in Japan, setting up Japanese industrial townships in India, collaborating in set startups to strengthen the ties between Japan and India. The Government of India has identified potential sectors for Japanese investments in India, such as infrastructure, railways, food processing, defense, electric vehicles, and pharmaceuticals, amongst others. Further, in order to attract foreign investment from Japan, the GOI has taken several steps, such as uh, offering preferential tax rates. Apart from the reduction in corporate taxes, identifying and developing land in industrial and other areas across India for setting up manufacturing units, providing utilities and other infrastructure, and revamping the labor law and bringing about other policy changes to attract Japanese investments to India. India is rightly placed in the current scenario to reshape its influence across supply chains globally. India is equipped with one of the largest scientific and technical manpower in the world, including in R&D, and its service sector continues to be globally competitive. Additionally, India's capability to supply raw materials and intermediaries offer businesses the prospect of reducing the dependence on multiple global sourcing. In furtherance of such efforts, India will also need to overcome challenges such as low productivity, lack of a robust ecosystem with efficient suppliers, logistical and infrastructure constraints, and lack of trade and investment agreements to emerge as a preferred destination for investment for Japanese companies. The report provides comparative analysis of India's investment and trade regime with China and other Asian countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Myanmar, and Malaysia on various parameters and focus areas for foreign investment, government policies, tax incentives, trade agreements, availability of labor, and infrastructure. It also highlights the investment opportunities in the Indian market, which are primarily due to skilled and educated workforce, its consumer base, its proximity to key manufacturing sites, key suppliers, and lower development costs. The report highlights recent announced in India to deal with the aftermath of the coronavirus pandemic. These reforms include reforms in the insolvency and bankruptcy law of the country, the labor laws, policy reforms for particular sectors, ranking attractiveness of Indian states for new investments, decriminalization of offenses under the Companies Act and other acts, changes in our foreign exchange law, and so on and so forth. The report also briefly discusses the challenges faced by foreign investors while investing in India and sets out our recommendations for strengthening the ties between India and Japan and aiding further investment into India in the areas like ease of doing business, ease of living, operational transparency, the tax regime, and land allocation. One of the key takeaways from the report is that the GOI is responsive, and an active government which has brought in many reforms in the past few years and has reinvented its investment regime to further incentivize foreign investors and prepare a smoother entry for them into the Indian market. Japan, having been one of India's oldest compatriots, has had a first-hand view into the working of the Indian production and marketing ecosystem. We appreciate the mutual growth of two countries together and a further deepening of the relationship between India and Japan in the years to come. Thank you so much.
I would now request Charge d'Affaires of Japanese Embassy in India, Mr. Toshide Ando, to share his remarks on the occasion.
Thank you very much. His Excellency Dr. Jaishankar, Dr. Reddy, Mr. Shroff, Mr. Shankar, Mr. Chinoy, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm pleased to attend this launching event of PICI's report, India-Japan Time to Seize New Opportunities. The presence of His Excellency Dr. Jaishankar and other dignitaries attests to the high degree of interest and expectation to bringing our bilateral economic relations to another level. Indeed, there has never been a better time to seize opportunities. The spread of COVID-19 has brought various challenges and hardships to the world, but at the same time has changed the way we think and act. When essential goods could not reach our land amid this pandemic, we realized how important it is to create robust and resilient supply chains. When it became difficult to meet in person, we have quickly adapted ourselves to utilize technologies as we meet online today. Necessity is indeed the mother of innovation. Our new mindset can open up new opportunities. I believe that this mindset has prompted India to pursue both goals of self-reliant India and make for world under the strong leadership of Prime Minister Modi. His statement clearly intended to put India at the center of global supply chains. Indeed, India will become stronger by playing a pivotal role in global supply chains through enhanced trade and investment. Of course, this cannot be a one-way street. Allowing a free and stable importation of meat products and other resources is critical if goods made in India are to be competitive in global value chains. Japan has always been keen to see successful development in India and has been a steadfast partner in advancing Make in India. I also want to emphasize that Japanese companies are making significant contribution to Make for World, working with their Indian partners. A well-known example is Maruti Suzuki. They are exporting automobiles made in India to Africa and even to Japan. Japanese companies are proud to make such first-rate competitive products together with their Indian colleagues. Japanese businesses are indeed keen to play their roles in India's new quest to be the hub of global supply chains. Last year, the number of Japanese companies in India rose to 1,454. But we should not be content with ourselves by just painting a rosy picture for ourselves. To make this picture a reality, I believe there are still more we must do. India's ease of doing business ranking has made a remarkable stride for the past few years, currently ranking at number 63 in the world. But Japanese companies are still facing various challenges in conducting their businesses here. Complicated legal and tax systems, late payments, difficult labor issues, and inadequate infrastructure are among the concerns repeatedly raised by them. When we look at the level of enforcement of contracts, India is still number 163 in the world. Can you imagine how much more Japanese investment we can expect if the level of enforcement of contracts is improved? Now, this report by FICCI is issued at a critical moment. It contains some concrete ideas for further reforms and policy recommendations from a viewpoint of FICCI representing India's business community. It also includes policy recommendations jointly submitted by FICCI, Japan Chamber of Commerce Industry in India, Japan External Trade Organization India, and the Embassy of Japan. The report is comprehensive, capturing the demands from both Japanese and Indian industries. It also makes valuable comparisons between India and ASEAN countries. These comparisons should provide us with constructive ideas of what needs to be done. So I ask all of us, both Japanese and Indians, to closely look into this report and, more importantly, to act to resolve the issues even going beyond this report. Last month, Prime Minister Modi acknowledged there are millions of challenges on the way to the self-reliance. I believe that he is confident India has the capability to resolve them, and Japan is ready to go along with our Indian friends on this path. Based on the discussion held between our two economic ministers last December, we have agreed to establish the Japan-India Industrial Competitiveness Partnership. Under this initiative, Japan will share its experience and experiences to raise the competitiveness of India's industries in the global market. Another important effort is the new Japan-India-Australia joint initiative to strengthen regional supply chain. The trade ministers of three countries had a very fruitful meeting earlier this month and agreed to work out the details of the idea of resilient supply chains in the Indo-Pacific within this year. The collaboration between Japan and India is multifaceted, including a growing service sector and finance. Our joint efforts should be and are touching upon new frontiers, including IT, 5G, AI, and other digital transformations. In order to connect the vibrant talents of the countries, we have established a fund of funds for startups. As you know, in Japan, Prime Minister Suga has just sworn in. I am convinced that the premium our two countries attach to relations remain very strong under the new Japanese administration. And the Japan-India relations, strengthened by our shared goal for a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific, are now having positive influences across the globe. In an increasingly uncertain world, Japan and India can bring about assurance over peace, stability, and prosperity by working with other like-minded countries. In closing, let me stress that our economic partnership is at the core of our expanding bilateral relationship. I would like to quote Minister Jaishankar from his latest book, and I quote, "If Noida and Nagoya are to truly meet, it would add a new page to Asia's history," end quote. Thanks to the FICCI report, I'm confident our economic ties will become even more robust through our mutual diligent efforts, and we can add a new page to Asia's history. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anderson. Now, of course, I have the privilege of requesting Dr. Jaishankar to virtually launch the Indo-Japan report. Mr. You have a copy, if you could show it, and then we'll follow it up with a digital launch also. Thank you, Minister. Thanks for giving us this privilege. I'll now also launch the report on a digital basis for the benefit of our other participants. Thank you. It's now a moment of joy for us to request Dr. Jaishankar to share his vision with us on India's economic diplomacy landscape, especially with a view to our relationship with Japan going forward. Dr. Jaishankar, of course, needs no introduction to any one of us, but still, I think I must share that he's had an absolutely amazing set of assignments all through his diplomatic career. Before taking over as our External Affairs Minister, he's been the Foreign Secretary, as you all are aware, between 2015 and 2018. Prior to that, our ambassador to US for 2 years, and for about 4 years prior to that, our ambassador to China. And of course, he's also been in Singapore, Czech Republic, Moscow, Colombo, Budapest, Tokyo, as well as very, very important assignments with Ministry of External Affairs and also President of India's office. So he also spent a brief, or I would say a stint, as President of Global Corporate Affairs at Tata Sons prior to taking over as EM. Over to Dr. Jaishankar, a Padma Shri awardee in 2019. Dr. Jaishankar.
Thank you, Dr. Sangeeta Reddy, dear friends. It's good to see you all, and I'm really delighted to join you at the launch of the India-Japan Time to Seize New Opportunities report. At this time, I think if there are two key words which probably everybody in the world would be focused on, it's probably recovery and resilience. And I can't think of two more important countries, two more trusted partners actually to have that discussion. So this report, even in other circumstances would have been very valuable, but I think it is particularly timely in the situation in which we find ourselves. I had a chance, I must confess, thanks to the fact that somebody was good enough to send me an advance copy, to go through it, I found it quite interesting, even for someone conversant with this relationship, and I would really recommend it to everybody else. There's a lot of not just policy prescriptions. I think there's a lot of practical sort of wisdom there, which people would find it useful. Now, on this occasion, let me say a few words about India-Japan relations. I think since I imagine most of those who are listening to us or participating in this event have some sort of prior relationship with Japan, I don't want to sort of tell people what they already know. Instead, I want to lay out a series of markers which would sum up where the relationship is today, and then I would like to talk about where I believe it should be tomorrow. The first point I would make is that for what was for many, many years a very bilateral relationship, and in many ways a relatively narrow bilateral relationship, I think that has very decisively turned the corner. I mean, today the relationship itself has broadened out, and I'll speak a little bit about that. But when Indian and Japanese leaders, whether it's our prime ministers or whether it's our ministers, when they meet and when they talk, the breadth of conversations, we are discussing regional issues, global challenges. So I would say for both of them, the landscape of their interaction, the playing arena, so to speak, has become very much broader. And that, to my mind, is a very important development which signifies a sort of maturing of the relationship. Now, obviously, the economic aspect of it, and that's really what this report has focused on, remains very much at the heart of the relationship. Again, in my 25 years of association, I have seen it evolve from what was a significantly G2G relationship with ODA at the heart of it into a very much more B2B relationship. The ODA part, is still important. The G2G part is indispensable, but nevertheless, the fact is today, if you look at the B2B component, it is very much more. And again, that's something I will address later in my remarks. The second change has been that this relationship actually has become strategic. And by that, I mean that each country perceives developments in the others as having a strategic relevance to their calculations. And in a way, if you look at the substance of the interaction, we are talking much more about issues which go beyond our relatively narrow interests. The strategic nature of the relationship is also reflected in the fact that it isn't just today, Delhi talking to Tokyo. I mean, our embassies in different places, especially say at UN organizations or at important capitals, They are dealing very much more with each other. So whether it's the political side, the relationship has also acquired many more facets, and I'll come to the security side of that. So it's really, I would say, more conversations, broader agenda, larger playing field, many more facets. So it's got a sort of a complexity and a substance today that to my mind really reflects this journey of the last 25 years. Now, among those, of course, an important aspect of that is what we call the Indo-Pacific. I think India has a vision for the Indo-Pacific, as indeed does Japan. Both of us, we have in many ways sort of tried to shape the Indo-Pacific narrative, and it has been shaped really as reflecting the changing, people talk of the rebalancing of the world. There's also been a rebalancing of Asia, and there's been very fundamental changes in the strategic landscape of Asia, and I think today the seamlessness of what happens in the Pacific and the Indian Ocean regions underline the importance and the relevance of the Indo-Pacific. Now, the defense and security relationship has been a relatively new aspect of the relationship. It has actually progressed remarkably fast and remarkably well. And it's interesting, till actually I was looking at my remarks for this evening. I note that with Japan, we have both an annual summit and a 2+2 meeting. And it is probably the only country with which we have both. We have countries with which we have annual summits, we have countries with which we have 2+2, but it's the only one which actually combines both of those. And that, in many ways, actually tells you how much more in sync we have become in terms of how we look at the world and define our interests and weigh the importance of our cooperation. Now, the most recent development in that regard, of course, was the signing of the Reciprocal Provision of Supply and Services Agreement. It's a very practical manifestation of our ability and intent of working together, and I'm very confident that it would both be a big plus for the evolution of the Indo-Pacific vision of both countries, as well as adding to the stability and security of Asia. Perhaps one other related issue which I could flag here is India has last year tabled something called the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, which was done at the ASEAN Summit, at the East Asia Summit, and which is again trying to concretize our sense of how countries can cooperate in the Indo-Pacific domain, and here we look to working with our partners on that initiative, especially with Japan. Now again, when I speak of the sort of the evolution of the relationship, its growing maturity in a way. Another interesting aspect which is in the making, it's still early stages, is the fact that we first began to have discussions about third countries. Now we've actually started to look at working practically in third countries. We've done a little bit of that in Sri Lanka, and I think we are today trying to see whether we can cooperate and coordinate more closely in Bangladesh and Myanmar. That I regard as something which would again take our relationship to a very different level. And here I must mention a few years ago we started something called the India-Japan Act East Forum, which is chaired by the Foreign Secretary and the Japanese ambassador here. The idea was really to see how we can coordinate Japanese involvement with the development of our northeastern region. But in a sense, it has a larger significance because it really will impact our connectivity with Bangladesh and Myanmar as well. I mean, in that sense, I think its overall sort of relevance to our Act East policy is also of no small order. If I were to look a little beyond the horizon, I would flag today two issues for people to think about. We need to see, are those areas where we can work together. One, of course, is the possibility of economic cooperation in Russia's Far East, because India has shown a much greater willingness to be involved in economic projects there. The other is the Pacific Island countries, where again, if you look at our development partnership and our sort of political footprint, including Pacific Forum, whose meetings we do regularly, that has grown significantly. Beyond this, I would say we can see India and Japan working very closely, whether it is in respect of the ASEAN and East Asia Summit. Again, another platform which has, of course, been getting more attention is the quadrilateral arrangement. And these, to my mind, I mean, just as India-Japan relations bilaterally have progressed, I think we have also together adjusted to and responded to the changing world, and these are all manifestations of that. Now, let me come back briefly to the two words I began with, because I think that's that's at the heart of the report which we are releasing today, the recovery and the resilience themes. Now, there's no question, particularly in the last 5 or 6 years, we have seen a very visible increase in our economic cooperation. The FDI inflows from Japan have gone up. The number of Japanese companies in India have gone up. The ODA disbursements and the projects which Japan is doing through that have scaled up, and Japan in many ways is very, very directly and visibly contributing to infrastructure development. And of course, the big one which all of us have been working on for some time has been the high-speed rail project. So I don't think anybody would disagree with me when I say that we have taken the bilateral economic relationship today to a very different level. But having said that, I see some key lessons from your report. Okay. For Indians, I think the lesson is that we should not be benchmarking ourselves against ourselves. That we shouldn't, it's not enough to tell Japanese business that we are better today than we were 6 months ago. I think we need to realize that we are actually competing with the rest of the world, and we need to sort of think bigger, bolder, in a sense more strategically, but in an economic way. So I would actually make a case for a sort of a more ambitious sort of Indian approach towards Japanese business. For the Japanese side, the unsolicited advice I would offer would be, it's very important to understand Atmanirbhar Bharat, okay? Because at the end of the day, the thinking behind that is something which Japanese should very easily relate to. Because actually, if you look at Atmanirbharta, self-reliance, the pioneer of Atmanirbharta in Asia is Japan. So there's a lot, if they actually objectively look at the evolving thinking in India about it, I think there are a lot of elements which Japanese would find very familiar with their own development and their own sort of economic thinking. Now, at the end of the day, what we are trying to do coming out of the COVID, the recovery, resilience, concepts, is to see how do we build greater economic strengths at home, which will actually allow us to participate more effectively in the global economy, and at the same time actually offer opportunities, platforms, capabilities, partnerships to make ourselves credibly part of the global supply chain. Because the fact is, today, somewhere in the last 20 years, I think we need to accept that we haven't done in India as well as we would have liked to. We haven't kept up with the rest of Asia in many ways, and that's something we need to change. And I'm therefore particularly glad actually at chapter 5 of your report, because that's this is still, it captures, it's kind of hot off the press, it captures a lot of changes, policy changes the government has introduced in the last few weeks and months. I can assure you that there would be much more to add to your next report in that particular segment. But I think it's important that Japanese businesses track this, look at what new opportunities there are coming out of that, and actually realize that the post-COVID India would almost certainly be a more a more ambitious, a more worthwhile place to do business. So if I were to tell one side be more ambitious, I would also tell the other side don't be complacent with what you have. Track the changes, use the changes, try to actually expand your own businesses out here. I think our colleague from Japan referred to the supply chain resilience initiative. That's something which is worth noting at a international level, because again, what the COVID has done is COVID has actually expanded our sense of national security. Immediately during COVID, we are still in the middle of it. We started thinking of health security as an aspect of national security. But increasingly, I think people will look for economic security, to some degree supply chain security, as integral elements actually of national security. And therefore, in that sense, even our concept of autonomy, when people use the word strategic autonomy, usually in Indian discourses, we think of that as a political term, or possibly as a kind of security term. But strategic autonomy today has a meaning in terms of supply chains as well, that people want resilient supply chains, trusted supply chains. So this is, to my mind, really a new horizon that is opening up as a area of cooperation between India and Japan. The other broad arena I would point to, and Sangeeta, this would appeal to you, is the health side. Because this much I can tell you, the expectation of the average Indian in terms of healthcare has actually increased as a result of all the troubles that we are in the middle of. So you are going to see a big revolution. Some of that revolution was already in the making. Ayushman Bharat was part of that process. But it's going to be an interesting evolution, because there's going to be a bottom-up demand, but at the same time, the social progress, the social initiatives of the government, and the digital transformation that we are seeing, which has helped delivery in so many ways. I think together they're going to actually combine, and I think nobody would disagree if I were to say that they'll probably see a very radical change for the better in the health space. So let me therefore end my remarks with a few observations. One, when we look at Japan, I think I've laid out the case, the fact that it is today such an important partner, perhaps among the most trusted partners of India today. But Japan is also the great inspiration for modernization. Great inspiration for modernization in Asia, but for Indians, someone of my age, we saw our lives first change when Maruti came in. I think, again, Mr. Ando referred to it. The second revolution, I think, for which Japan was responsible was the metro revolution. I was actually in Tokyo when we signed the agreement for the Delhi metro. And today, people cannot conceive of life in big urban spaces. Certainly in Delhi, people, the period when the metro was shut down, we saw what a difference it made. So we've had the Maruti revolution, there's the metro revolution. I think in many ways a bullet train revolution in the making, and possibly many more. And as I said here, because of the history of Japan, the strengths of Japan, it makes you a particularly invaluable partner in our own journey to modernity. And the second point I would make is, as we both look at the world, at what's going to be a very radically different global order, whose contours actually are extremely unclear at this point of time. Again, we are two countries whose values, whose mindsets actually make us very natural partners. We are working together in different forums. I expect to see that expand. So I think all the economic activity will probably get a lot of support from the larger ecosystem, especially the political side of the business. So this is surely an account which I expect to see grow, and I'm very happy that you have released today a report which in some ways is partly a roadmap, partly a course correction, partly, it's a kind of a reflective piece on what we could be doing better. And I thank all those people who put that together and got us all thinking in that direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. That was truly inspiring with your insights on India's foreign policy and specifically with Japan. To go through our report and give us some comments that really motivates us to surely do the next edition next year. I'll now invite Mr. Jaishankar, Senior Vice President, FICCI, to have a freewheeling conversation with the Minister with a few pertinent questions on our relationship with Japan. Mr. Jaishankar, over to you.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you, Minister Jaishankar, for a very, very frank and, as usual, highly enlightening views. I'm conscious of your time, sir, so I'll come straight to one or two points that you made in your remarks. The first one is that you said that it is important for the world to understand the thought behind Atmanirbhar Bharat, and I think that's really important, because while the Prime Minister's agenda is to make, as you said, a much more self-reliant, confident India that can participate in the global economics far more freely and confidently, it seems to have sent contrarian signals. And is there a need for us as a country, from the government side and parallelly from other sides as well, to make sure that it does not send out signals that India is regressing or that we are beginning to look inwards, and that we do exactly what we want to achieve from this?
Look, I don't know if you were watching the Prime Minister on August 15th. I was, and I heard him very clearly say, "Make in India, make for the world." So I think from the government side, we are all very, very clear that the direction that we see the Indian economy going is really an Indian economy with greater capabilities in India. Because look, at the end of the day, if you do not have an economy, a country the size of India needs to have an employment-centered economy. Okay, and we cannot have our manufacturing hollowed out by imports which come in at sort of non-market prices. And we've seen the result of that. Our friend from Japan quoted me on Noida. I want to tell you something. I lived in Noida for a very large part of my life. And I've seen actually how much, what has been the impact of the economy in the last 20, 25 years. And the fact is, manufacturing is hurting in this country. So it's important. I mean, if a country the size of India, the scale of India, the ambitions of India doesn't address its manufacturing challenges, what role will you play in life? I read something very interesting. It had a very catchy phrase. It said, deindustrialization is unilateral disarmament. So we want to go out there and play in the world. We need to be industrialized. And Atmanirbhar Bharat is about manufacturing. It is about creating jobs. I mean, we are not into jobless growth. And it's also about actually making yourself a more capable player vis-a-vis the rest of the world. I mean, you see, at the same time, this has been accompanied by initiatives making it easier to do business, making it more attractive for investments to come in. So it's not a slogan in isolation. It's got a whole lot of other steps. So I would urge people to look at it very objectively.
Thank you very much. I think that's very helpful. And as you said, it's not just a slogan, it's a complete package. And there is a lot more in that package that people should look at. Specifically, any thoughts on how this group of people who have business interests, either from Japan in India or from India in Japan, how can they leverage that?
I realize my association with Japan is about 25 years old. It started in the embassy when I was in Tokyo. And if there's one thing I learned in this period, it is that while there are some solutions you can kind of give at a 40,000 feet level, and there are broad policy sort of prescriptions or positions you have. A lot of it is very, very granular, it is very specific, it is very sectoral in a way. And my sense is on the Indian side, we need to sort of drill down and look constantly at what is it which will make it more attractive for Japanese business to work here. But on the Japanese side, I think there's got to be a realism. India is India, You can't say, well, in some other country I get that, There are some countries, sometimes it's not a bad argument, okay? But if you take a country with a completely different political sociology and say, well, I get that there, well, that's a different country. So, and again, the point I would make is, Japanese investors can't wait for the perfect investment conditions to come in. If we get it that perfect, we would invest in it ourselves. So they also need to take a few risks and, sort of make their calculations and see where they go.
Yeah, I think you referred to that in your comments when you talked about the ambition on the one hand and the need to be mindful of the complacency on the other hand as well. And just moving quickly to the other side, sir, the Indo-Pacific. It's both Japan and India are very clear and very committed to a peaceful Indo-Pacific region. And a few words from you on the recent attempts to, by some countries to emerge as dominant powers in the region that could create imbalances.
Well, let me put it to you this way. I think we would all recognize that 70 years ago, this was a very, very Western world, and the changes we have seen. Sort of the example I used to sort of shorthand for those changes is that from the time when the G7 used to meet to, in a sense, kind of lay out policies for the world. Today, it's a much broader group of countries. It's called the G20. And the term which we often is used is rebalancing. And a lot of the rebalancing has happened in Asia. If you look, I mean, it's very interesting if you see 1960, 1980, 2000, every 20 years, you look at the top 20 economies, essentially you've had some Asian economies really go up the ladder. Now, while there has been a rebalancing between Asia and the West in a way, there's also been rebalancing within Asia. Now, if we believe that a democratic world and a fairer world requires more players who reach arrangements among themselves, what applies to the world also applies to Asia. So you can't, it's a multipolar world is a phrase I use in my business. A multipolar world must have as its foundation a multipolar Asia. And this is something which I think Japan and India very strongly believe. And we are two countries. As I say, it's not just about narrow national interests. We look at the world, issues like connectivity. We discussed, should we have connectivity based on market principles or not? If you have, say, challenge of terrorism and very sort of fundamentalist radical ideologies, should we not be doing something to combat that? If you look at maritime security. So I think both of us are being, we are in a sense taking on with every year more and more responsibility, not just for ourselves, but I think as part of the management of the world. And that, to my mind, and Indo-Pacific is one part of it, not the only part of it. And I think that in many ways holds a lot of importance for the value of this partnership.
So one last question, sir. Do the sub-regional ambitions within Asia pose a threat to the emergence of Asia as the dominant continent of the next century?
I would, I would prefer to sort of put it a little more positively than your question. I think if we are to make Asia, give Asia a more prominent place in world politics, then it's important for all the nations of Asia, especially the large and important nations of Asia, to get along together. Because if they spend their energies not in a positive manner, but contesting each other, they're not going to advance the interests of Asia. So I think somewhere that realization that every country has a right to pursue its national interest, but I think part of international relations is how do you temper national interests with the requirements of sort of global good or common good in a way. And I would certainly hope that all the important players in Asia have that kind of mindset.
Thank you, Dr. Jaishankar. I could go on. It's always enlightening experience to engage with you, but I'm conscious of your time.
Thank you.
Over to Manish.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, and thank you very much for the support.
Thank you, Minister. I'll just request our ambassador in Japan, if he would like to just add for a couple of minutes, anything for the benefit of the industry present here today.
Manishji, just a couple of very sort of granular points. Thank you very much, Manishji. Just a few points which are very granular in nature, comes from the very base of the industry here. One is that as an industry, as a chamber, as a business association, I would request you to tell your members to give the realistic promises to your partners in Japan. Many a times what's happening is that a promise is given by an Indian company, which is not pragmatic, and therefore it could not be followed up on our side. And the Japanese companies take it back home, and then the conversation in the business circle here is that you can't trust the Indian companies. So one will be that we should only project those things through the businesses, which the businesses will be able to implement or deliver upon. Second one, so this is the part of the trust. Second one is on the part of predictability. Now, Japanese companies, all of us know that they love predictability, and anything going on our model, which is a model of disruption, uh, uh, that is something they are still averse about. So they are risk averse, and therefore we have to keep their culture perspective, and only on the basis of that we should be able to promise to deliver something. Uh, uh, another thing at the business level again is that we have to tell the Japanese businesses, as Honorable EM very rightly said, as to what to expect from India, what to expect from Indian businesses. India is not Japan. And therefore, if we are able to understand their culture and make them understand our business culture, we'll be doing a great service to our own nation. Finally, on the supply chain, all, I shouldn't say all, but a very large number of Japanese large companies are already in India. So we are not wooing new investments from them. It could only be incremental investment from them. So therefore, you are looking now at the another segment of the Japanese businesses, which is SMEs largely, and some of their S are M for us, some of their M are large for us. So you are looking at their SME sector. So can the business try to understand what is it that the Japanese SME sector look like, and therefore look at inviting them. When you invite Japanese SMEs, what happens is most of them are actually aligned to Japanese large companies. So if Japanese large companies, which are already in India, relay back home good stories, I call them feel good stories, then there will be a larger chance that the Japanese SMEs will also look at India positively. This would mean that we will have to create a good Japanese speakers or Japanese speaking technical human resources. So this is what I wanted to share. Thank you very much.
Okay, so minister's not there, but I think Mr. Manish Sharma and Mr. Ravind Sanareddy, they wanted to share some views on Indo-Japan relations. If we could have some quick interventions from both of you, please.
Yeah, Manish, thank you so much. So not much, but I would take it forward from where Master just left. I completely agree, and in some sense, people like us should be the flag bearers either way. I mean, flag bearer of India in Japan and vice versa also. And so quickly reflecting our commitments. So I am managing Panasonic's business here, and next to our 15 manufacturing facilities, we are now investing one more in Sri City. And the approach is very similar to what you mentioned. We are also looking at enabling backward integration apart from the large facilities which we set up. That is one. Second is in the responsibility of chair of FICCI's Electronics Committee. So we've been engaging with DPIIT under the Empowered Steering Committee led by Dr. Pawan Goenka. And fundamentally, the approach is very similar to what the Honorable Minister and yourselves also mentioned, which is how do we sort of unlock the demand potential of the country. Parallelly, how do we backward integrate? And I think the role of small and medium enterprises potentially collaborating on technology with small and medium enterprises of India is the right business model. And finally, how do we be in the center of the supply chain? So there, I think we'll need support both on the supply side and also on the demand side to enable exports out of our country. So that is all what I have to say. Thank you, Manish, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Mr. Sanareddy, any intervention from you?
Yeah, sure. First, I want to thank FICCI for bringing up such a wonderful resource with the help of Amarchand Mangaldas to the business community. Since Honorable Minister talked about Atmanirbhar Bharata and we talked about employment-based industries, I think Sri City is the perfect example where we are hosting almost 25 Japanese companies like Panasonic, as Mr. Sharma mentioned just now, where they have come for making for India. Of course, some of them are also making for the world exporting, but primarily they're here. And our ambassador also, Honorable Ambassador, has suggested about the SME park. Sri City has been in the forefront of making a SME park for all the Japanese enclave, we call our park within the park. So that when we see the next wave of people coming here because of all these China Plus strategy and all those things, I think Sri City will be a good place for these SMEs to come and knock on our door. And we have such giants already here to give them that help, like Torre, Isuzu, Kobelco, Unichop, some of the best brands. And so we will be happy to receive many more Japanese companies. We are already second largest conglomerate of Japanese companies in one location. We have 25. I think they have today. I think Japanese companies invested more than $1 billion in Sri City alone. Recently, Yokohama Tides also choosing Andhra Pradesh as a potential new plant destination. Is a good news for state of AP and Sri City. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Senareddy. So since we already, I think, overstretched beyond our time, in case there are no more interventions, may I request Mr. Dilip Chinoy to conclude the session for all of us?
Thank you, Manish. First of all, I'd like to express our sincere gratitude and thanks to Dr. Jaishankar, Honorable External Affairs Minister, for being with us. So your informed, insightful, in-depth, inspirational, really opening statement, and the way you actually addressed the questions that were put to you, giving your perspective, the possibilities of Japan-India trade, and also your positive outlook throughout is really inspirational. Thank you, for being with us today, and we really hope that the report benefits both industry and investors in attracting greater investments from Japan and the world. And we would like to also congratulate you, on your book, The India Way: Strategies for an Uncertain World. A lot of what you said also resonated with what was written there. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the Shahji's Affairs in the Embassy of Japan, Ando-san, for being with us today, and also Ambassador Sanjay Verma, Indian Ambassador to Japan, for joining us and for both your statements. We'll also thank Mr. Shardul Shroff and Shardul Amarchand and Mangaldas for their partnering with FICCI on creating this knowledge leadership report. It was just a few months ago that when we were, I think in November, we were in Japan earlier last year, where we actually presented another report there. So thank you for your continued engagement. Dr. Sangeeta Reddy, President FICCI, thank you for being here, and Swadesh Shankar, Senior Vice President, thank you for guiding our various initiatives and endeavors at FICCI with Japan, and thank you for conducting the fireside chat. Thank you, Mr. Manish Sharma and Ravi, for your interventions, and of course for Mr. Nikhil Nanda and Mr. Onkar Kanwar and Mr. Rohit Relan and all for actually supporting this. Before I close, just want to reiterate the FICCI Leads, which is a flagship global program for FICCI, which is being organized from the 12th to 15th of October. Please do look out for this multifaceted international platform where the theme reimagine the world, and we hope that you can actually participate in this. Once again, I want to thank everybody for joining us, all the viewers, and thank you, Manish and team, for putting this together. Thank you, and stay safe, stay well.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, team FICCI, for putting this together. Excellent work.
Yeah. Manish and rest of the team, great job. All the very best. And to all members, we look forward to your continued interest and work in this area. All the very best. Good luck. Namaste. And stay safe.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
GB member, past chairperson Pro Jaipur, and a sports person who represented India in International Badminton Championship in 2019. Welcome one and all present over here. My is the women empowerment is directly related to economic empowerment, and there is an entrepreneur in each and every woman. Hereby, reach you all with the great initiative, which is to support and promote distress artisans. Adding to this event, there is a diamond whom we all know. I welcome Ms. Vasundhara Raje Scindia. She is an Indian politician currently serving as National Vice President of Bharatiya Janata Party, and also hold the position of Chief Minister of Rajasthan 2 times, 5-time Member of Parliament, and 5-time MLA. With career spanning almost 35 years, Vasundhara Raje ji has emerged as one of the most honest female politicians in India. A global ambassador for Rajasthan, she hails from a royal families of Gwalior and Bharatpur. She derives much of her inspiration from her mother, late Rajmata Vijayaraja Scindia ji, the founding member of BJP. In 2007, she received Women Together Award by UNO for services rendered towards self-empowerment of women. In her tenure of work, women empowerment in Rajasthan took a great boost. I am positive this session will serve as a Bible for women looking to shatter the glass ceiling. Now I invite Ms. Janvi Phukan. She is 37th National President for FICCI Flow and the first Flow President from India's Northeast. Ms. Janvi is an entrepreneur and co-founder of 2 National Tourism Award-winning companies. Bengal Navigation. We also have here with us Ms. Latika Kusla. She is the founder and director of Freedom Tree, board member of Color Marketing Group of USA, and founder organizer of We have with us none other than our own past national president of FICCI Flow, Ms. Neeta Bhutra. She was the 31st national president and first from Rajasthan and founder chairperson of Flow Jaipur chapter. She is an executive committee member of SAT Chamber of Women Entrepreneurs Council in India. Now I invite Ms. Neeta Bhutra for her welcome address. Neeta ji, over to you.
Yes. Thank you, Alka ji, for that wonderful introduction for all our special guests today. It's so lovely to have Vasundhara Raje ji with us today, Janvi Phukan with us, and the All India, Pan-India members, and this beautiful virtual audience. Thank you so much, Alka, for that wonderful introduction to everyone. गुलाबी शहर जयपुर से आप सभी का अभिवादन, अभिनंदन. Happy to see you all virtually in these special pandemic times. Flow, as everyone already knows, is South Asia's oldest chamber of business and commerce, with 17 chapters pan-India and more than 8,000 members. As a woman entrepreneur myself, a jeweler, I believe nothing empowers a woman more than her own money in her pocket. Women empowerment is directly related to economic empowerment. Sashakt Mahila, Sashakt Samaj, Sashakt Desh, Atmanirbhar Bharat are directly related. As the president of Flow, we did concentrated efforts towards skill training of women and young girls. Knowledge is power. And towards that, may I inform Vasundhara Raje ji especially that we published, as the national president of Flow, I published this book on laws affecting women in India. It has got all the laws related to a woman right from inside her womb to her last rites. And it is a colorful document, as you can see, with each and every right of her right here, right under in one compilation. This ready reckoner has proved to be very useful to everyone. And we've had repeated requests to have them in all the languages also. Today is the launch of Flow and Creative Dignity's joint initiative to support artisans, to make them Atmanirbhar. And to launch this, we have with us a true champion of women's rights, a woman who walks the talk, an inspiration to all of us, Srimati Vasundhara Raje ji Scindia. Indeed, we are very happy to have you here with us. She has been extremely supportive to FICCI Flow right from its launch in 2008, 14 years ago. And all my chairpersons, the past chairpersons, remember how wonderfully benevolent she has been towards Flow. So we come to this launch. Handloom industry is a valuable skill resource. It has minimal use of capital and power. It's environment friendly. It is very flexible. There's a scope for innovation, and it can be a huge growth driver for women to join India's economic workforce. With this interest and this effect in mind, our president, Janvi Phukan, the first national president from the Northeast, has taken up this onus, such a crucial intervention in these pandemic times. Congratulations, Janvi. Her focus is on sustainability, which is undoubtedly the need of the hour. And this would be a solution to recovery and resilience. And what challenging times they are facing because of this. But yes, as true champions, they've made the most of this virtual world. Janvi and her entire team has been wonderfully rocking the entire nation. We've been witnessing such wonderful, innovative work by her and all her chapter chairpersons, one better than the other. I can see Malu from Mumbai, and I can see Usha from Hyderabad. I can see many more, but these I can see directly. So a big hello and a hug to all of you. And also, as a president, past president of Flow, when I look at where Flow is today, I feel proud that Flow has been able to build a formidable network of motivated and talented women leaders. They rock and they shine all around. A big hello and a shout to all my past chairpersons of Flow Jaipur. Again, I can see Minal there and Alka Batra very much there. A big hi to all of you. With these words, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. और अंत में हम यही कहेंगे कि ये तो एक प्रयास है आज, परंतु ये हमको लगातार ये प्रयास करना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि श्रम के पौधे पर सफलता के फूल खिलते हैं। सिर्फ श्रम हमको करना है, हम सबको वो प्रयास करना है। हमें एक फोकस के साथ जो आज एक बेड़ा उठाया है जानवी फूकन ने और क्रिएटिव डिग्निटी को, उसको हम सबको आत्मसात करना है, उसको सक्सेसफुल बनाना है। दैट इज व्हाट वी ऑल नीड टू प्लेज टुडे। थैंक यू सो मच। ओवर टू यू अलका।
थैंक यू।
थैंक यू वेरी मच शीतल जी। आपका सुनकर हमें जोश आ गया बहुत ज्यादा। और ऑफ कोर्स देयर आर थ्री पावर हाउसेस आर देयर टुगेदर, यू वसुंधरा जी एंड जानवी जी। सो बहुत ही हम लोगों को अपनी एनर्जी फील हो रही है। Anyways, coming to the next, now we have Latika Khosla ji with us. I have already introduced Latika ji, and she is after all these design initiative. I would like Latika ji to please give us brief about this initiative. Over to you, Latika ji.
Namaste. I'm here to talk to you about FICCI Flow's association with Creative Dignity, a cause that I'm closely associated with as a volunteer. The creative dignity movement itself is a movement of volunteers, and it's fired the imagination of the best professionals, whether they've been producers, artisans, state ke NGOs, ke sector experts, design practitioners, of students. Bahut simple approach hai. The whole idea is, how do we first give relief and then rehabilitation and rejuvenation to the artisan? Artisans want work. They don't want charity or handouts. And a few months ago, when ground research was done, it showed that the karigars were without access to raw materials. They had piled up stocks. Unki na to robust markets thi. Festivals ka naamo nishan nahi, events nahi ho rahe hain. Aur is wajah se koi continuing orders or sales nahi hone wala tha. The future seemed bleak. This, a watershed moment, allowed us to think, how do we integrate these keepers of craft and enable them to participate into digital futures? In August, Artisan Direct started with a Gujarat campaign to manage stock sales via e-commerce. Partnerships with 4 amazing premier websites gave a platform to boost this movement of stock. You know, when we can't get to a marketplace or touch or feel products, haath nahi laga sakte, we can't engage with the maker, we have to rely on the image. So we are ever grateful to the Gujarat chapter of FICCI Flow to Rupa and Reshma Patel, who personally engaged and sponsored the photography and made this first step happen. Creative Dignity's professional team of volunteers, the state heads, the organizations, design schools, and Rajasthan's Craft Institute students overnight all helped in cataloging the photography and calibrated the pricing, the creatives, and the media planning. FICCI also helped to spread this good news through its massive network, which you've just talked about. And because of that support, today, in just a month, Artisan Direct is gratefully able to go national with Flow. Pan-India, states and artisans are participating in what will be launched today, and an increased number of participants